In Summer's Draw, we know the instruments used and how some of the tones and textures of these instruments are created, and through the use of changing rhythms, these combinations create different moods, dynamics and tensions in different sections of the song. We can also identify the timbres of the instruments, such as the warmth of the bass, the natural acoustic properties of the acoustic guitars, essentially their woodiness in comparison to the more distorted electric guitar, but depending on what is actually played and how it's played can alter these timbres and textures. We also understand that the music is written in the key of G. All of the instruments are playing chord sequences or melodies within that key. However, they're actually playing variations of the chords or melodies in different ways or orders, and this can alter the mood of the song. By changing when a chord is actually played in a sequence, it can create the impression of extending a musical passage to create impact for the next section. I want to discuss in a bit more detail how the timbres of these different instruments and their different textures and tones that are created can identify different genre elements. When we hear a distorted electric guitar, many of us associate that sound with forms of rock music. Depending on how the sound is produced and how distorted or crunchy that tone is, it might help to identify its origins of influence. For example, a mildly overdriven guitar tone might suggest the sound influence of 1950s rock and roll to mid-1960s rock. So check out Jackie Brenson's Rocket 88 or The Who's My Generation for that kind of example. A more crunchy, fuzzy, overdriven sound might suggest an early 1970s influence when rock got heavier. Somebody like Jimi Hendrix might fit that bill. A heavily distorted guitar tone might suggest 1970s or 80s heavy metal. A deeper, bassier, more compressed, distorted tone with scooped out mids could be informed by thrash metal or more modern djent-based heavy metal from the 2000s. I'm going to play the Telecaster guitar on its own so you can hear it isolated, and we'll discuss elements of that tone that we're hearing. The timbre of the electric guitar is actually quite distinct. The guitar is a Fender Telecaster designed in the late 1940s and was popular from the 1950s onwards. It's a simple design with two single coil pickups that create a glassy-like tone to the notes. The notes are clean and undistorted with quite a bit of clarity in the top end of the frequency spectrum, so they cut through the mix quite well. An electric guitar with humbucking pickups has more mid-range and low end, and these tend to dirty up more the louder they become, and they create more natural overdrive in their sound and so feature more prominently in the middle of the frequency spectrum. These types of guitars have perhaps more weight to their sound or timbre because of this. When we hear the Telecaster play chord sequences, there's more pick attack, and what I mean by that is while I'm playing with a plectrum to pluck the strings, I'm actually creating more attack in the sound or the notes as the chords are ringing out, because I'm playing harder and hitting the strings harder. When I play a melody in a more mellow part of the song, then I'm playing softly and hitting the strings less, making the notes sound more smooth and rounded. The guitar playing is actually very much informed by the sound of the guitar. I wanted the guitar to ring out in the mix and sit above the other instrumentation, so I used a series of chord sequences that were quite open and spread out across a 4 or 8 bar length. These chord structures were played as counterpoint to the melodies played on the acoustic guitars and bass. On occasion, the guitar is mimicking the same root note melody played on the bass to emphasize that melody or riff that's being played, but then allowing space between different passages for other instruments to play their accompanying melodies or patterns. With the use of chorus, phase and delay, the kind of sound and playing technique I emulated was that of Andy Summers from The Police. Have a listen to Walking on the Moon as an example of using delay and chorus on a guitar line. You can hear something similar in Summer's Draw, although I pushed the effects further to create washes of ambient tones in the background. By using additional delays, chorus and reverb, I'm creating pad-like sounds in that background, and these additional effects creating these ambient washes are influenced by other forms of music. So we might identify ambient music like the Boards of Canada, or something more progressive and psychedelic when there's more interplay between singular note melodies or motifs that are played and those effects that are affecting and creating repeated arpeggiated musical passages. And this might be reminiscent of somebody like Pink Floyd. We're now going to listen to the acoustic guitars for a sec. Like with the electrics, I'm doing very much the same with the acoustic guitars. The main melodies that you're hearing on Guitar 2, the AC Clean Cave, are reminiscent of folk or acoustic guitar music because the melodies are finger-picked. What I mean is that I'm playing with my fingers instead of a plectrum, and so the tone is different. There's less attack and is generally softer in sound, but it does depend on how you pluck the string and how much nail you use from your finger as to how much attack there is. This fingerpick style is heard in the music of people like Nick Drake, so check out Fruit Tree or Road for that particular style of playing. The sound you're hearing for Guitar 1, AC's 70s Pat's Chorus, is again quite a natural acoustic guitar sound, but with added chorus and processing to give it further depth and warmth. This patch is based on the guitarist Pat Metheny's sound, who pioneered the use of chorus in his guitar playing. He was a jazz player from the 70s. However, the kind of playing that I'm using is I'm playing harmonics. These notes are not played in the conventional fashion by holding down the string and then plucking it, but rather hovering above the string and lightly touching the string, and when I hit the note, I create a harmonic of the note you would hear if you were holding down the string, but it's an octave above. You can hear it's slightly more hollow in a way, and perhaps there's a little bit less definition in comparison to playing the same note. If I played it properly, it rings slightly differently. So this kind of note or playing has a different kind of timbre. Check out Michael Hedges' Layover as an example of what I'm doing there. However, when you add the chorus effects and the kinds of notes I'm playing and the ambient pad-like sounds together from Guitar 2, this makes the overall acoustic guitar sound something a bit different. You might suggest something like Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois with that kind of sound that's going on. It's quite ethereal. At times when there's more interaction between the guitar parts, and particularly when the electric guitar is there as well, you might hear more 16th note like arpeggiated guitar lines, which could be reminiscent of people like The Edge from U2 and songs like I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For.